What we do know they did, whether or not they beheaded, it was they machine gunned them to death in their cots.
Yeah.
So whether or not they were decapitated seems to be a slightly sort of spurious debate, but it does look as if people were indiscriminately decapitated by these people. There are stories that they were given very powerful drugs to enable them to commit these atrocities. And one of the stories that came forward from these horrific videos is we've heard about women being raped indiscriminately, while children were as well, and they were raped so violently that their bones were broken.
Yeah.
This is what these people.
Thinking about
this is what these people did. And when people say, "Oh, come on, Israel, let's have a ceasefire. Come on, don't commit atrocities." I mean, for God's sake, what kind of a sovereign nation is going to put up with that being done to its citizens? Israel has to avenge what happened.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Well, I think even if it's not about revenge and avenging what happened, I think Israel is perfectly within its rights to say, which it has said, we can't allow this to happen again. We absolutely cannot see a way forward where Hamas can hide in Gaza and literally wander across the border whenever they want.
Yep.
So what they've said at the very least is that if they do sort of allow the Gaza to become an independent territory, they'll still need some kind of massive military buffer zone. And this is what they've always argued. They can't be living cheek by jowl next to people who want to kill them.
That won't be an independent territory, I'll tell you that. It'll probably be a car park by the time the Israelis are...
yeah, but there's more and more people in the wider world who say that's exactly what they should do.
Israel, in the end, will stick up for itself. America, of course, is a restraining influence. All the international community is saying, you know, be careful here, Israel. Don't go crazy you know, to avenge what happened. Be careful. However, Israel has a mission. Now, the problem is that the taking of these hostages by Hamas, and by the way, those poor old ladies, you took 85-year-old ladies hostage.
Yeah.
God's sake. No. Anyway, the depressing thing about the hostage-taking technique is it has kind of worked because nobody wants, including the Israelis, of course, nobody wants to see those people killed, their lives sacrificed on the altar of what's going on there. So the hostage thing has acted as a big restraining influence on the Israelis, but quite how long this kind of standoff with all these forces on the border is going to last for, I don't know. I mean,
you remember back to the days in Lebanon and Beirut when Terry Waite was taken hostage, and people were taken hostage and kept for a year, sometimes 2 years, before they were ever let go. And I mean, I think the trouble is that the absolute kind of crazed nature of this the Hamas organisation is that they have no sense of proportion, they have no sense of time, they have no sense of anything other than the destruction of what they see as their, you know, Israel, as their jackbooted oppressor, Israel. And so I mean, it's hard to see any kind of reason for example, the European Union in front of the Telegraph today saying, you know, we should be looking towards a ceasefire. Emmanuel Macron's gone out there talking about having a ceasefire. And again, Israel are going to say, well, we can't have a ceasefire until they let the hostages go.
Yeah, and by the way, Monsieur Macron, this mission has only just begun. They haven't even invaded yet. They're in no mood for a ceasefire. The bombing, by the way, has intensified to an extraordinary extent. I think it was yesterday or the day before. You know, bearing in mind, the Gaza is only about 25 miles long and about 3 or 4 miles wide. 2 days ago, I think it was, 300 bombs were dropped on that small strip of land. Right. And that isn't including the many hundreds that have been dropped before. So it is being, it seems to me, almost systematically razed to the ground, even before the invasion happens.
Exactly. Well, of course, we're also hearing, because we do hear an awful lot about the kind of the military techniques that they would use, and they wouldn't use an awful lot of actual individuals to go into the sort of catacombs almost, and the tunnel networks. They would use a lot of drones, they would use a lot of robots, they would clear spaces before they went through those particular areas. But you'd have to believe, unless Hamas is making people stay there, forcing them to stay there, people would be moving out, wouldn't they?
Well, Israel is saying that when it does go in, they're predicting that the fighting in Gaza alone could last 18 months.
Right.
Because a city is the worst terrain for a battle in all of warfare. So Israel is not deluding itself or the world. It says when we go in, as Netanyahu has said several times, it will be a long and difficult war. So what they're doing now, I mean, extraordinarily, Hamas basically exists in this tunnel system underneath the Gaza Strip, and there are more tunnels there than the London Underground system. They've got 311 miles of tunnels, and there's a lot of weapons depositories there, all sorts of equipment down there, and that's what Israel is trying to do with this bombing. It's to destroy the tunnel system and therefore literally undermine Hamas. And frankly, you know, Israel will not be deterred from its mission, a mission that I think I approve. I'm sure you two do as well, Mike, and that is to destroy Hamas, literally to destroy.
When we saw that interview yesterday, which we talked about with Victoria Derbyshire and the former Prime Minister of Israel, Bennett, Mr. Bennett, Naftali Bennett, I think it was.
Bennett,
I mean, he basically said, look, we don't need your protection. We don't care what you think of what we're doing. We must protect our population. We must stop what Hamas has been doing, and we must never let them have the opportunity to do it again. According to the Telegraph, Washington apparently last night hoping to work with Qatar on a deal to release as many as 50 of the 222 hostages still held by Hamas. But, I mean, again, that won't include, presumably, anybody who's not a US citizen.
The thing about Hamas is, you know, the whole hostage thing, their technique, it just works. So every time they let out two old ladies, you know, was it a couple of days ago, it was a mum and her daughter, last night, two old ladies. They look sort of humanitarian. They look like, oh, they're doing the decent thing. So they've got more than 200 of these people, so they can let two out here, one out here, one out here. Every time they do it, they look like the good guys. But they've still got 190 or so in dungeons somewhere underneath Gaza. So, and those people, it is their lives that we fear for. And, of course, they're Israeli citizens, so Israel will be careful. So you've got two restraining influences. One is the Israeli fears for their fellow citizens who are hostages, and the other is the likes of Joe Biden, who is really urging restraint here because of the potential humanitarian catastrophe inflicted on the innocent Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. So Israel has taken a lot longer to go in than we'd expected because of these restraining influences, but I think it will before too long.